What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. We've been in this conversation called Black Nonbelievers Next Door for about 5 weeks now. I think this will be the sixth weeks because this will be the sixth installment. And I started this initially as a request from Black Nonbelievers just to really support them and the work that they do. But after doing the first one, I was just like, you know what? Why not just go ahead and do a few more? Because in the first one, I introduced this report that we've been pulling from. And so I figured, hey, why not just go through the whole report? And it's the Black Non-Religious Americans, a brief from the U.S. Secular Survey. And so we've been going through this line by line, and I think it's really been some great conversation. And today we're actually going to finish it up. So again, we're doing this for two reasons. Number one, to support Black nonbelievers, to bring more visibility to the organization, to bring more funding to the organization, to bring more support to the organization. If you're a Black nonbeliever somewhere and you've been trying to figure out how can I make a difference, then maybe starting a local Black nonbelievers chapter in your area might just be the ticket for you. But then also just to bring some insight into what it may be like for some Black non-believers. Now, just as with any group or with groups, period, we're not a monolith, but data is data. There's quite a few things you can learn, and as long as you don't use that to try to put everybody in the same box, then it's likely a safe endeavor. So, because inquiring minds want to know, and because good hearts want to help, that's why we're doing this series. And today we're wrapping up um, at least the portion where we'll be dealing with the survey. I may continue this one on a little more just to drop in some other information. I know throughout my channel I've shared information about Black atheists and Black atheism, if there is a thing, um, um, throughout history, and dropped in a few names that some people were surprised to hear. I know more recently I mentioned Zora Neale Hurston. And so I'll likely be doing a video on her soon as well, because again, a lot of these people, atheism is it's a human phenomenon, and so. But anyway, we'll talk. All right. So if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider joining, connecting with, supporting this community in any way that makes sense for you. And then check out our merch. We have some of the dopest merches in the game, and as you can see, merches. We have some of the dopest merch in the game. I see what I did there. I conflated dopest and merchist. Dopest merchist in the game. So we have some of the dopest merch in the game, and we have some books, which you can see those titles in the back. Words of a Shattered Mind. That's my wife's book of poetry. Christ Held Up. That's my newest book. I can't get the fingers right, man. It's difficult, but you see him. Christ Held Up is the orange one, and it's my most recent book dealing with what's taken Jesus so long, and honestly, having a very scholastic conversation. It's a pretty fun read, pretty easy read. And then Memphis, that's my bread and butter. That's my heart. The first novel that I've ever written, and it's written in the genre of epic fiction. So you get a little bit of everything in there. Um, yeah. So check it out everywhere where books are sold online. All right, so let's jump in this conversation. I'm naming this one the ballot or the bullet. Yeah, I thought that was relevant. I thought that was relevant. I thought that was cool. Obviously, this is one of my favorite speeches from Malcolm X, as many people know him. Malik El Haj Shabazz is how some others know him. But Malcolm Little is how some others know him. But it was one of his most iconic speeches, and this speech really wrestled with, or really highlighted rather, the struggle that Black people had, and in many cases still do have, with this idea of voting. Um, and not necessary, and kind of feeling like you're getting the short end of the stick type of thing. And this has been a common conversation from from the dissenters in our community. I know from at least I can trace back as far as Marcus Garvey, but then also um, Malcolm X, and then even who many know as Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. They all had literally the exact same critiques of voting in America when it comes to Black people. And I think this part of the survey may shed a little insight on that, and may even kind of platform us to have some of that conversation. Because the part of the survey that we're in now is voting and policy priorities. And so let's kind of jump into this and see if we see anything that is surprising, right? And remember, I do share the link to this survey in the description. And there's also the links to Black Nonbelievers in the descriptions, including where you can learn more about them. They're a very transparent organization. They have their bylaws and everything on the website. You can learn more about their events and figure out which ones you want to support. And you can donate directly from the website. So we have those links there as well. All right, so I am jumping into this. While the vast majority, 93.4% of Black participants surveyed, were registered to vote, a lower percentage of Black participants voted in 2016 and reported that they always or nearly always vote compared to all other participants. Although not directly comparable, these rates are much higher than the voting rate in 2016 for members of the general voting age population. So, already, like, there's something I want to hit there, and this is correlation. I don't know if it's causation, but there's this idea of these Black nonbelievers who reported that they always or nearly always vote compared to other all other participants. In the most recent election before this survey, if I understand it right, um, though registered to vote, a lower percentage of those Black nonbelievers actually voted. Now, that's not surprising to me, but it's partly because I don't know if we consider how highly correlated voting in the Black community is with religious duty, and how tightly woven or interwoven um, voting or politics and beliefs are in that sense, you know. And it's some interesting dynamics there too, but it's it's a mixed bag for damn sure. But I can see how Black non-believers would be less inclined to trust the voting process, you know. And that's normally where that conversation comes. It's even the names that I mentioned earlier were on different spectrums of belief when it comes to yeah when it comes to when it comes to voting and things of that nature. So that one's not that surprising to me. Now, again, that's a hypothesis. I don't, and that's just based off of correlation. So I don't know if that's actually the case, but I can know just by tracking some things historically and knowing how Black atheists have chosen to engage the politics of America, and how Black Christians have chosen to engage the politics of America. The conversations are very different. And so, especially for Black people who have recently departed Christianity, they're going to be navigating a lot of conversations on the way out, trying to figure out their new worldview. Again, which is, I often remind people that, you know, leaving any type of superstitious religious belief system isn't just a letting go, it's a getting up. You now have to explore the world around you. I mean, I think the allegory of the cave, which I sometimes call the cave of shadows, I think it fits perfectly for as a metaphor or allegory for coming out of religion. Recognizing that the shadows are not real is not enough to give you a solid worldview, and then just coming out and people just yelling that, well, hey, now you need to do this. That's not going to be great either. This is going to be incredibly abrasive. So it's going to take time for people to figure out, all right, so who do I trust now? Because that's, you know, for the Black person, and I mean, I don't think this is a surprise. Many non people who are not black highlight this often. For black people, many times leaving Christianity, in particularly, is going to have some racial overtones to it, and overt and covert, in the sense of you're going to, I'll say, 8 times out of 10, be wrestling with how you perceive that you might have come into contact with this religion. Uh-huh. And so then that's going to make America not so great looking of a place for you. Especially when, still both political parties, even though one tries to pretend like it's not, but both major political parties are still highly connected to this religion as well, and are both highly invested in keeping this religious ideology in the forefront. You know, even though one, claims to want a more liberal version of it, but sometimes I need things to be liberal and progressive. You know, okay, but that's just me. That's just me. Okay, that's a lot from that just one paragraph. I didn't mean to do that much. All right, so the U.S. Secular Survey participants were asked 2 sets of questions to better understand which policy priorities were most important to them, as non-religious people. First, they were asked to rate the importance of various policy priorities. Figure 24 shows the difference between those policy priorities that black participants marked as very important compared to other participants. Notably, black participants were less likely to view nearly all of the listed policy priorities as very important. The greatest differences were seen regarding public funding of religious schools, religious displays on public property, and LGBTQ equality. And so I'm just kind of looking over the figures now. And again, I did link this so you can look at the figures too. I'm not leaving you out. I just don't have the bandwidth to add it on the screen right now. But there was something in this. Yeah. So when I looked at this chart, I was looking at the ones that was different, and it is something, and I'd want to ask the people who put this together, because they said that black people voted more, or the greatest difference was seen regarding public funding of religious schools. But well, I guess. Okay, I get it. I get it. Nope. I see it. So that was pretty high on the list for Black nonbelievers. Yeah, the actually the 3 highest are maintaining secular public schools, denial of health care based on religious beliefs, and access to abortion and contraception. Those were the areas that were most likely to be ranked as high, as very important. But interesting were the where black nonbelievers seem to have a greater, um is that on this one? No, I think it's on that other chart. Okay, so we'll go to the other chart. There is, now I told you this one has quotes in it throughout the place. This one is quite a long one, and I can almost guarantee, I can almost, based off of the words, I know who this is from. Female California. Now it may not be, but I think it is. But I'm not going to say it. Mandisa will tell me if I got it right or wrong. Sociopolitics, especially within communities of colors, have always been an issue relative to experiences of stigmatization and discrimination. As a Black atheist humanist woman, I am always expected to subdue, dilute, or submit myself to the bigotry and supremacy of others into my everyday life so they can feel privileged and or better than I am. It does not help that governance in America is leaning more and more towards theocracy, regardless of party and branch, which also makes me feel that I do not have the same liberties and freedoms as many others. It is holistically unjust and unfair because atheists and non-theists are human beings too. We deserve equal, equitable, just, and fair treatment, as well as the same freedoms to be others like everyone else. Absolutely. I agree with the good doctor there. All right, so next, survey participants were asked which of the policy priorities were their top 3 in importance for advocacy by secular organizations. We asked this question in order to help secular groups better understand their constituencies and set their advocacy agendas. Nearly half of Black participants stated that maintaining secular public schools should be a key priority for organizations representing non-religious Americans. Now, I do find that odd, you know. Okay, let me read through it more now. Black participants also reported that secular organizations should advocate to oppose religious exemptions that allow for discrimination, ensure access to abortion and contraception, and protect youth from religious based harm. The first two priorities align with those identified by other survey participants. However, non-Black participants instead selected opposing inappropriate political activity by churches as a top priority. Okay, so now I see the divide. Okay, now I see it. So it's the Black non-believers who participated in this survey said, one of the main things they'd like to see secular communities doing is protecting our public education schools, our public schools, secular public schools, from religious, subterfuge, ultimately. And this is likely important, and I've talked about this on this channel before a few times, and I know I've talked about it concerning college, but man, talking about K through 12, particularly in the South, but not just in the South. We always like to think, it's just the South because the South is the Bible Belt, but like northern schools have gospel choir too. And those gospel choirs are typically led by literal gospel choir directors from church who do typically use that period to talk about their belief and the power of their God. And if those children have any emotional experiences while singing those gospel choir songs, those gospel choir directors are going to tell them that that was the Holy Spirit, as opposed to telling them that, nope, this is a natural biochemical response that you're having. So that's an issue. But no, quite a few students. I'm sure Black and white, but I know quite a few Black students end up coming to the faith, as far as into the obedience of the faith, through their teachers, through their educators. It's their educators who end up inviting them to Bible study one night. It's their educators who offers to pray for them someday. There's an interesting dichotomy, especially in the South, of this. It's almost like a trope, right? Where you have these two people who marry and are committed to a mission. One becomes a police officer, the other one becomes an educator. And for both of them, it's a mission field. Different types of mission field, but the same target in both cases. Different outcomes, same target. It's a trope. But no, I can see that because quite a few of my teachers loved me because I was religious, and so it definitely made it easier for them to also be religious with the students and to kind of use me vicariously to, make religious things happen. So yeah, that I can see that now. I can see that now. And then and the swing on the other side, non-Black participants instead selecting oppose inappropriate political activity by churches as a top priority. And yeah, I can see that. Moreover, there were several areas where Black participants prioritized policy items differently than other participants. For example, Black participants were 1.8 times as likely to identify persecution of non-religious people internationally as a top policy priority for secular organizations compared to other participants. And this is likely because Black people are always forced to globalize their issue. So anytime we have an issue, we're always told that our issue is too small because it only impacts us. We should think about everybody. This is what we get told every election cycle. Forget your issues. Don't we'll get to that when we can. Like, damn, how long we gotta wait? So we'll get to that when we can. So you have to put your local stuff and your issues as a racial group on the back burner for the whole, and you have to vote for what's good for the whole. But then what Black people begin to realize is that no, you don't really care about the whole. You just care about your group. And because your group is larger than our group, you're trying to use that as an illusion that it's the whole. And so, yes, many Black non-believers, because we've been forced into globalization by not being able to validate our own local issues and the importance of rallying around those issues and like setting our foot down and saying, no, you know, I don't want to talk politics because y'all will get mad at me, but it is what it is. We need to be voting around our local issues so we can actually build a foundation so we can actually have a voting block instead of giving our fucking vote away every 4 years and trusting that, no, this 4 years is going to be different. I think doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is the definition of insanity. And I don't care how nice they are when they ask us to do it, which, let's be honest, they're not even being nice about it anymore. These parties treat us like they like they deserve our vote. Earn me. You understand? I'm just saying. Like I don't care who you love. I ain't gotta love who you love. Because I actually do think about the international issues. Excuse me for not being bought into the bandwagon. And and just for my white Americans that are watching, please understand that as a Black American, I'm not going to have the same attachment to this country as you. Not if I got some sense about me. This country don't love me the way that it loves you. You know. So let's be clear there. Let's be clear there. This country likes to tokenize me, not really value me. And I don't have to pretend like that's not happening. But okay, let's keep rocking. All right, so that's the voting part. I told you I named this ballot and the bullet, and so you're getting some of that ballot or the bullet. So you're getting some of that. But so let's move on. The survey kind of closes with recommendations for community building and organizing. There is another quote here, so I want to read it, and it's from a female in North Carolina. It says, I think non-believer spaces would be more inviting to Black people who have doubts about religion if free-thinking, humanist, skeptic, etc. communities were more culturally inclusive and acknowledged how white supremacy influences these spaces. Ooh, that is a mixed bag. All right, so let me read this and then I'll see if I can circle back to that quote. The U.S. Secular Survey provides valuable insights that can help both national and local secular organizations better meet the needs of Black non-religious people and communities. But data alone has little value. If secular organizations want to better meet these needs, they must be willing to take meaningful steps to reach out to Black non-religious people, to re-examine their activities and their missions, and to accept that changing membership and increasing diversity requires organizational change. Our data shows that Black non-religious participants experienced significantly more loneliness than other participants. At the same time, they were more likely to belong to local secular organizations than other participants, and membership in these groups can provide critical support. However, in a culture where 78% of atheists are white, this sense of isolation can be amplified if the secular groups that Black non-religious people turn to for support lack participation by non-white people or are even exclusionary. But this can change. Local secular groups can and should work to build communities that are inclusive and accepting of all non-religious people and that are committed to working across difference. Based on our findings and the perspectives of national leaders with significant experiences organizing Black non-religious communities, we offer several recommendations for secular organizations to better engage Black non-religious people. Here's another quote, and I want to kind of circle back to a lot of this, so that's why I'm reading, so I can just take enough of it in. I experienced the same instances of discrimination and stigmatization that are common among atheists in America. As urgently, there is a serious undercurrent of misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, and scientific racism in many atheist and skeptic communities today, which don't necessarily take responsibility for policing themselves. This is dangerous and has become a tacit endorsement of this bigoted behavior and an endorsement of the alt-right. It sucks, and it is becoming untenable for marginalized populations to join mainstream atheist groups. And so All right, so be aware of how white supremacy affects organizational and interpersonal dynamics. Willingness to learn and accountability are essential. Both national and local organizations should recognize that there is an imbalance of support between secular organizations primarily focused on non-religious people of color and those that, while intended for everyone, can be exclusionary. Too often, organizations express a desire to engage Black non-religious organizations and members of the community without taking real action to do so. The organizations may give awards to prominent non-religious people of color, but may not give financial support for the work they are doing or provide opportunities for leadership and growth. Rather than platitudes and tokenism, there's that word, leaders of secular organizations must realize that if they are serious about changing their organizations and supporting Black members, then real change starts with them. To thrive, Black non-religious people need genuine support from established secular organizations, and this can only happen when secular organizations are willing and able to listen to their um, Black members to accept that, regardless of their intentions, engagement with Black non-religious people has not been adequate, and to educate their leadership and members about the oppression and resulting inequalities that Black Americans continue to face in our society. Okay, I do have a problem with this line. To thrive, Black non-religious people need genuine support from established secular organizations, and this can only happen when secular organizations are willing and able to listen to their Black members. Okay, I get the sentiment of that. I really do, and I understand what they're saying. But I also find statements like that to be somewhat patronizing. Black and I think you've heard me say similar things like this before. But no, Black non-religious people do not need established secular organizations to survive. That will accelerate our success. It will catalyze our success. But please stop approaching this with the white savior complex. Let's approach this more so from a place of partnership, which is why I do like one of the things that they said. I think one of the easiest things you can do, and probably one of the wisest things to do for those of you who want to know, how can I support Black non-believers? Financially support established Black organizations such as Black non-believers. That's a great way to start. The funding pool is going to be less, okay? Now, as a sociologist, I do like to try to bring some nuance in here because sometimes what we're dealing with are gravitational differences. And so when we're dealing with the disproportionate funding, we're dealing with gravitational differences. When you're dealing with sometimes feeling isolated, in many cases outside of, intended discomfort where people, and this happens, right? But in many cases, these are actually just gravitational differences. And one of the things that I think needs to happen in all communities is that we need to kind of break away from this idea of we're saving this community. We need to move away from that type of mission work and that we're partnering with these communities. And the reason you're partnering is because you're not equipped to save. You don't have the tools to save. And that's what I was wrestling with earlier while reading through some of the quotes, and I think there are two more. It's like if you are really passionate about climate change and and you want to support technological advancements in climate change, but you ain't got the first degree or the first, tenured experience doing anything with technological advancement and climate change, but you're really passionate about it, you don't go out and try to start a technological advancement climate change company. Nor do you even go out and try to work for a technical, whatever I said, climate change company. You financially support it. And you do that because you know you're not skilled in that area. I personally think putting the impetus on white organizations to become more culturally inclusive is bad strategy, because then that means they're going to have to define what it means. And I don't think they have the tools for that, you know, in the same way that if, you know, in the context of a black majority, you know, we likely wouldn't have the tools to say, okay, how do we make this more comfortable for white folk? Well, we would because of experience in this country, you know, but that's a whole nother other mixed bag. But no, the point is, so and I'm by no stretch of the imagination saying white folks shouldn't try. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying white if white secular organizations want to help, the best way to do that is going to be to financially support the black secular organizations in partnership, you know, um, and literally wrestle it out. You know, like what does this partnership look like? How can we help each other? Because that, you know, that works better, in my opinion, from a strategic, um, from a place of strategy. Because first, black people need the safe space, and those safe spaces are going to come from black organizations. You know, because a lot of times what you're going to get if you're not careful is you're going to get some very abrasive culture clashes, which I think is what a lot of this is speaking to. Because then you kind of go in expecting these people to be informed on the things that you're informed on, and I think sometimes we don't really wrestle with the scope of information, because there are things that are important to other people that I'm like, oh dang, I didn't even think about that being important, but now that you say it, I'm like, that's important. But because of the trauma that we've had to deal with in this country, things are often very triggering for people. And to be honest, we our media has not done a very good job. And I'm not talking about like false news type stuff. I'm talking about literally the way we engage art as a community, has done a good job of supporting these type of traumatic narratives and traumatic imagery, um, that kind of perpetuates traumatic responses, um, and that's difficult. And so I think, you know, and I've said this about the South before plenty of times. I think we need more support for those black secular organizations so that they can be louder and that they can be more visible and so that they can be a bridge, you know, which I, and, you know, but that means we have to get out of our silos, and we have to get out of looking at this like this is my organization, and you know, let's not do what the healing evangelists were doing in the 20s and 30s, measuring each other's tents and seeing who could make a bigger tent. The truth of the matter is people are incredibly variable and complex. We are a dynamic species, and when it comes to attaching ourselves to different groups and tribes, apparently it's like Pringles, we can't have just one. And so by supporting some groups, you're not in any way going to be, you know, tearing down the possibility of success in any group, which is interestingly how we've approached the black political situation in America. Is that, no, you can't support a black political situation. It has to be an all of us situation. All lives matter. All secular organizations matter. And they do. And they do. But if we're really passionate about creating a more equitable experience, you know, I don't necessarily use words like fair. I it's I have a hard time finding that word. um, but equitable for sure. If we want to create, you know, even to me, if we just want to create things that are more healthy, if we want to have a better worldview, then I don't know if trickling in Black folk into just and scattering us amongst the many, predominantly white secular organizations is going to be the best way to start shifting things. Because in those cases, we're not considering the gravitational differences. In those cases, we're always going to be the minority in the room, you know. And when you think about the physics of that, the small thing is always kind of gets wrapped up in the big thing. you know, that's just the math. That's not a math that we can't overcome, but it is the math that we tend to lean into. And so that's how things end up feeling very isolating and exclusionary, because you're at an event and 95% of the people there like country and rock and roll, you know, which obviously that is a stereotype, which, and it's one that I haven't found people really fit into very neatly at all, because I like country and rock and roll. But I probably do like more hip hop and R&B than country and rock and roll. But I love it all. Um, but no, it's I think there's a lot of gravitational issues from a sociological perspective that makes it really difficult to 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 healthily get acclimated into spaces when you're a part of not only a group that is a minority group, but a group that has also been marginalized. There's a lot of preconceived thoughts. There's a lot of fears, substantiated and substantiated. There's a lot of triggering moments. There's a lot of guessing. I wonder what they're thinking. And because, we can't just pretend like history hasn't happened, you know. And that's the hard part. And that's why I say, I think, this is just my little hypothesis. I think the best approach is financially supporting as many Black non-believing organizations that are out there and that are actively doing the work. Whether that work is community-based or research-based, we need to find them, support them, platform them. We need to encourage them to partner with each other as well. And I think that will make it, I think that will be a healthier transition into making it easier for us to all be in each other's spaces again. Because at the end of the day, it's like a representation issue, right? When we're in these spaces as individuals, when something goes wrong, who can we go to? It's something I remind people in my work in DEI at work all the time, is that, like, if every time your offshore or Black employees or Hispanic employees complain about a certain person, if your response is, well, this person is always nice to me, then you're already committed to not getting it, you know. And so then the messaging that sends to the people, to the minority and the marginalized groups, is, I have no representation here. When I come to you, you're going to protect them, not hear me. And so even in cases where there isn't an actual, even in case where something hasn't happened, that thought is there. If something does happen, is there anybody here that's going to represent me? Is there anybody here that's going to be willing to see that? And ultimately, I think, even as I'm saying it, many of you can realize that that's just an incredibly human situation. It's just that in some groups you have more privilege to not have to deal with that. But then there are groups where you're likely the minority in too. And so you've experienced that. And so you can identify with how uncomfortable, how discomforting, and how isolating that can be. And there are no easy answers to this. I'm sure some of you have even tried to be more so, empathetic, more so considerate, more compassionate. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because we're not dealing with something easy here. We're definitely dealing with something that is generationally complex. But if we're committed to actually engage this critically, I think we can make great strides. But I think one of the things we have to become averse to when dealing with any groups is we need to avoid that savior complex. You know, And that's for all of us. This is a personal lesson I've had to learn in my own life, that as a pastor, my view of people was incredibly patronizing, that you need saving, that you need me preaching to you. And if I'm not preaching to you, if I'm not your pastor, you're going to be in trouble. No, man, it doesn't work like that. Um, you could likely benefit from my partnership, but no, no, I don't want to patronize anybody. Nobody needs me to be their savior, you know, but everybody can benefit from support. I hope that makes sense. Listen, y'all, I've enjoyed this one. I think there was another quote that I got to read. Intersectionality is sorely needed in the humanist secular community. Many Black people have familial and other ties that mean we are more tolerant of cultural religiosity that isn't condemning. And that's for sure. And then I just wish more Black Americans who are non-religious would speak out and create a network for people like me to get together. I love being the catalyst of change, but I am alone in my fight, and I don't know how much more fight I have in me. I kept it hidden because I had never met another Black person who did not believe in a God. I knew I would be ostracized. Then I attended a sci-fi Comic-Con type conference many years ago and was completely shocked to see Black Nonbelievers had a booth at the conference. That changed everything for me. That was a defining moment for me because I knew there were others like me. And see, this is all the reason you need to support Black Nonbelievers. That's a great organization. Find Black non-believing organizations, especially if you're one of those people who got 99 problems and money ain't one. Hey, that's a great way. And then you can volunteer for a Black organization. That's a great way to become a part of it, where you're being willing to take somewhat of a peripheral seat, and actually learn and work with them. There are more opportunities, um, and it's really it's this is why I say I don't like taking the savior complex, because when you take the savior complex, we got to save them. They're not going to make it without us. It's really hard for you to look at them as equals, and so then when you don't look at them as equals, you start doing things for them without them. And doing things for me without my input is not a great way to build a relationship. And it can be very well intentioned, but if you don't know me well enough to know my needs, you're going to assume some things, and many times get it embarrassingly wrong. And I think that's what happens with a lot of spaces. The spaces that tend to be um, the spaces that tend to be a little more healthy are the ones who don't try too hard the wrong way. Because that is how you get to tokenism. That is um, how you lean into stereotypes. And so what I've often encouraged people to do, is that if you are in conversation with anybody who is representative of any type of societal difference, cultural difference, make no assumptions. Treat them like you've never met that person and get to know that person. And so when it comes to the group and you say, well, I want to know more about the group, then you need to find an organization that exists for the group. And those type of organizations are going to be your best windows. You can ask me questions about what it's going to be, what being a Black believer is like, Black non-believer is like all day. But likely my experience is only going to represent, a few others. You want the group information, you got to support the groups that are getting that information. All right, so I'll keep talking if I don't stop. And this is already almost 45 minutes. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Again, the link is in the description for the entire survey. You can read it through and kind of walk through it and wrestle with those facts, and see if there's anything you disagree with. See if there's anything you can cross check and find maybe a more recent report, which then that wouldn't be disagreement necessarily. That would just be that this has changed since then. But those are good ways to use surveys and to kind of expand your knowledge, if you will, of the world around you, and a great way to get insight into what other people are thinking. I thought adding the quotes throughout it was a beautiful touch. I'm so glad they had that on there. It really brought a sense of humanism to it. So you realize that, man, these are the thoughts that people have. These are the things that they're wrestling with. And some of the time, these things are very raw for me, very triggering for me, because these are thoughts that I've wrestled with myself before. And so I get it. And while we all don't share the same experience, there was some quotes who were just like, pretty much, fuck it, I'm me, which that's pretty much where I live. I don't know, deconverting just kind of gave me my fuck it, I'm me back, and so I love it. You know, but no, I'm loving to seeing the things that are happening within the Black community. I was at the Recovering from Religion fall excursion last week, or last weekend rather, this past weekend. And it was wonderful to see Black nonbelievers represented there, literally, and figuratively, in the sense that Black nonbeliever board members were there. And also there were, a handful of Black folk there. And I added to that bunch. And so that was nice. And then just, we all had a good time. I was worried when I first got there. I'm like, I wonder if all the Black people are going to group up, if we're just going to group up and just be in our own little thing. Cause that does happen a lot, in a lot of settings. But no, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, but we still have we have a lot of work to do. And a part of that work to do, um, in this case, I'd say let's support those who are most equipped to do the work. And when it comes to the work needed for Black nonbelievers, let's support Black nonbelievers to do the work of Black nonbelievers, to make it easier and healthier, for us to partner with the other secular organizations. And that way, so that our voice doesn't become a caricature or a stereotype or anything other than that. Um, that the dynamism of who we are, the complexity of who we are, doesn't get stifled into any one ideology, um, which is going to be the even more complex part, right? Because there is a tendency for us to lean into this idea, and this is something I'm incredibly averse to, that we all have to think the same things, that we all have to view things the same way. And this is really why the work of Black nonbelievers and building Black secular organizations is necessary, so we can get the diversity of our voice back. Um, yeah, because man, it's exhausting sometimes when people treat you like there's only one way to be Black, and if you do something different, you're not Black anymore. If you have a different thought about this, well, you're not really Black. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. All right, so that's all I got. I love y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. If you haven't already, like the video, hit the subscribe channel. No, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider supporting, connecting, or joining this community channel or content in any way that makes sense to you. And check out the merch, check out the books, because we have some really dope stuff. All right, and until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and if you can, stay beautiful. I'll holla.